Good afternoon, dear viewers. And today we are in Shari Loom Homestay, and this is the second episode of the program, the Shillong Reading Room. And today we are very, very glad that we have Notsu here with us, and she has just brought out her book. This is called in Biate, Khâmnu Khah Avar Im Issue Wise. And actually, I'll ask Anna to talk about it also a lot more. So, because before we go to the main discussion, I'd like to tell you about Anna. Anna is a PhD scholar in cultural anthropology and development sociology from Leiden University, the Netherlands, currently doing research in Jaintia Hills, Meghalaya. Her PhD research is part of a 5-year project featuring heritage, conservation, community, and contestation in the Eastern Himalayas, initiated by Leiden University and Ashoka University. So Anna has been here for the last 2 years now, and then she'll be here for another 2 years, I think so. But maybe I'll let Anna tell something more about her beyond the bio that I've asked her about, I've talked about. So Anna, thank you so much for coming for this program, and please tell us something more about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so thank you for the introduction. I'm doing PhD, but my journey actually started in 2023. That's when I also met Bokto. That was before I officially started my PhD. So I guess my involvement in this part of the world started way before I started my PhD. And I think that gave me so many ideas about what I want to do with or without the research, and what I'd like to actually do with the people I collaborate now for my research. My research itself focuses on the Jaintia Hills of Meghalaya, particularly Pna. So my research explores their relationship with the environment, and then through that I started to think about the culture of Nyamtre. But this book actually focused on the Biate. Why? Because, again, my relationship with the Biate community also started from 2023, when I heard from someone that, oh, if you're coming to Jaintia, you must know there's another group of people called Biate that actually not many people know about. Not many people, even from Jaintia Hills, know about this community. It was then I became so curious, regardless of my research focus, that I must go to this village and then meet the community. And so that's how everything started. And now I'm exploring the opportunities to kind of collaborate with the people who gladly took me and welcomed me into their homes and their land. And so that's why
I think that's very interesting, Anna, because I think the viewer also should know that today Anna's article on the Biate, on the book that she wrote, just came out in Shillong Times. I think you can read it. We're also going to put a link in the biodata when we publish this story, so you can go and read the article as well. So Anna, before I go into the book itself, before I go into the Biate community and what was your experience out there, maybe can you tell something about this article that you wrote? What did you write in the article? What are the issues you raised? Because I think that's going to come out in our discussion as well.
I've been actually writing a lot about the Biate community, partly as a way to thank them for having me, for welcoming me, for taking me as if I was part of the community. That has been such a pleasure for me. And so it was my way of returning their favour. And then this article, I wanted to talk about the journey of making this book, particularly the part where translation, what to include in the book, because this is a picture book, so of course it has illustration, the visual elements, as well as the literary elements. So I wanted to talk about what was the difficult part of making this book in terms of how to translate, what not to translate, and what to include in the image in this book. So that's the article is about.
Because one thing about the article I really love, especially the one part you talked about, when you took the story back to the Biate community and they said, it doesn't sound like us because it is not emotional, right? So that was it struck me a lot. So when you heard that comment, what did you think about it, and how did it then allow you to maybe refine the translation even more? So can you tell us something more about that?
In a way, I was so heartbroken that time because it was really coming to the part where we wanted to finalize the book. And then that's where people were a little bit confused or didn't resonate with the story itself. Although it is a Biate book, it is a bilingual book. It has Biate and in English. And then I based the story on the original story which was collected in Biate by a Biate school child. So I was really heartbroken when I heard they were like, this doesn't sound Biate. It is in Biate, but it doesn't sound Biate. And so the conversation started as to why that happened, what is the problem. And so that became a learning journey as to, for instance, so this book is the first ever book in Biate that is not based on religious stories. So for them, when they heard that I was making this book, they wanted to make it perfect. They wanted to make the language authentically Biate. So the translator felt the weight of the responsibility to translate the text into Biate, which she felt needed to be perfect. So she actually went to elders to, translate every single word that I wrote in the story back into Biate. What's the word? What's the authentic Biate? What's the grammatically correct term for this? And then in the end, the result of that was something that is not they would use currently. And this is ultimately a children's book. So children have to be able to understand the story and they have to resonate with the story. So the language that this book has must be somewhat colloquial. So I think that's where this, I wouldn't say mistranslation, but the difficulty of translation started. So when I was told that this doesn't sound Biate, and then the first reaction was like, oh my goodness, what went wrong? But then we took it and then we understood what went wrong. And then so this is a Biate book. Let's make the Biate text Biate again. So that's how it started.
I think, if I'm correct in my analysis, what happened was that when you were translating it, it became very formal.
Yeah.
Like maybe like churchy, like you go to the church, you talk very formally, but that's not how people talk in every day.
Exactly.
So what they wanted was more authenticity of their experience, like right now how I'm talking. So I think that is a good experience. I think even me, that's a good revelation for me as well, right? So this is something maybe later on going ahead also, you would be also looking forward to incorporate this lesson into your other works as well. I hope so.
Yes, actually the story, this is an adapted story based on a Biate folktale. But I wanted to base it on the everyday life, the current life that the Biate community has. So it's not set in the past, it doesn't start with once upon a time. It's right now, how they live current life, what they do there. So that I wanted to show through this story.
And also because I know you were there for a long time in Saipung, you stayed there and you were washing clothes with your own hand. That must have been an experience for you. I mean, you were in the West, I think where you had the washing machine, but now you're here, you're going to the river, washing clothes. So how was the experience staying in the village and the people, how were they? Can you tell something more about that?
Thank you for asking. I mean, that time I didn't think so much about it. I don't know, it came quite naturally, perhaps because I just enjoyed being there. I was happy to be there. That nothing, well, of course, there's some elements of inconvenience. They don't have a market, for instance, so you can't buy things that you want like you could in Shillong. So those things were there, but I was more than anything happy to be there because they welcomed me so much. They took me as if I was a family member. So I was happy to eat the same food, share the same food. I was even cleaning. I told them don't treat me like a guest. I'm not a guest anymore. I'm not a foreign visitor. I'll visit again and again. I won't be a visitor. So I think they understood that, and so they took me in as if I was also one of the children in that family. So the family who took me in treated me as if I was always there, and then I really appreciated that. So yeah, washing. Like we took, like sometimes in winter they don't have enough water to save water, so then we take the baskets, say plural baskets of dirty laundry to nearby stream, and then it's very cold. But then this is also a bonding experience for me, and then I think I wanted every single detail of this everyday life in that village, Saipung, to be part of this book, and I think. Without these experiences of being there, having to go through this everyday experience with them, together with them, this book wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, and I think the book came out very, very well. I mean, I look at the book and I think the people those who can, maybe later, they should also buy the book. Maybe should have a look at the book. It's beautiful. I'm telling you, it's really beautiful. You should go and find the book, because Anna is also going to talk about the future work. We'll talk about it later. But now let's kind of come back to the book itself, because you were there,
Yeah.
you helped you're part of the community, and then you decided to have this book, right? But before we come to the book, just a little bit like, because is this book part of your PhD, like per se, or is it something is an addition to your PhD? And how did you get? Is it part of the funding comes from the PhD itself or from
Right.
elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it is not actually funded by the research funding itself. So my PhD research is funded by a Dutch research institute in the Netherlands, whereas this book project is separately funded by an independent research institute called Delta. So I don't know. I think it is part of my research project, because I am the same person that doing the research, and then I am based here, and this is where I do my research. So in a sense, it is always part of the research. And then I took so many inspiration from the journey of making this book, and that would contribute to the research work as well, of course. But this, more than anything, is a way to return something back to the community. So in that sense, it is separate, but it's also part of it. As I reflect on the journey, I reflect on what I learned from this, would always be part of my research project.
I think we'll come back to that, because I have one more question about that. But
Yeah.
let's talk about how did you collect the stories? Because I do know you told me that it was quite a challenge, and I think the audience would like to hear more about those stories of how actually you came up. How actually did you collect all the stories and the drawings? Because in the book you have the drawings of the children at the back page, which was really beautifully scanned. So can you talk a little more about that?
Thank you for asking that. Well, actually, originally I was just curious. Being in Saipung and spending time there, I had burning questions of like, what's their relationship with the environment? What are the stories related to the environment? So it actually started my own question of what's their relationship. Given that my research is also about the human-environment connections, so what kind of stories are there? What do they tell about the environment? What do they think about the environment? And then, of course, that's partly because that area, very far east of East Jaintia, is a part, unfortunately, going through the effects of climate change greatly, and also the pollution from the nearby coke factories and the resource extraction, etc. So that element is there. So what is this environment that they think of? But then at the same time, they have this beautiful Saipung Reserve Forest. So they must have some kind of connections that they would like to tell us, they would like to narrate. So it started from there. So I asked school children in Saipung to collect stories related to the environment from anybody, from elders, neighbours, their family members, relatives. So that was the first part, because I wanted to base the book on what they collected. I wanted the book to be about their perspectives, what they do now or how they live. So I told them to collect. I didn't necessarily say collect folktales or folklore. I just said simply collect stories that are not yet written. They collect stories related to the environment. So then that was the first part. And then they all came back with A4 paper, handwritten, all in Biate. So very difficult, obviously, for me. I don't speak Biate, so I had to translate them first. I asked one of my Biate brothers to orally translate, so for me to have an idea about what they collected. I think I collected in total about 20 stories. Some are short, some are very long. Some are like scribbles, some are just short sentences, variety of things, and very, very different themes related to drum cultivation, related to hills, related to paddy fields, related to some kind of legend, related to plant. So I really enjoyed what they think of the environment, like that showed through the stories. So the second part was, of course, to make children's book, it has to have the visual element. And I also wanted that to come from what they do and how they imagine. I wanted that imaginative element to come through. So I told again, the people, not only in Saipung village, but like in and around Saipung, to then make drawings based on the stories that they collected. So out of all these about 20 stories that they collected, we set up a writing competition committee to pick about 3 to 5 stories based on what I wanted to show. So it must be related to the environment, the story must be clear. It wasn't so much about the grammar, but those were my criteria. And so then the committee chose 5, and then ultimately I picked 2. I wanted to show all of these 5 stories, but at the drawing workshop I organised, it was actually quite difficult to do all the drawings based on 5 stories, so we picked 2. And then the Biate volunteer, my friend, came, and then he actually read out the story collected by school children in front of all these volunteer school children ready to draw. So then I think about 25 in the end, of various ages came to this classroom, thinking that they would just have a drawing day. It was a drawing day. And then they listened to the story, and then they just went silent. And then they probably wondered, what is this story about, etc., etc. And then gradually the classroom started to have chatter and laughter. They were talking to each other. What is this plant? So one of the stories is about this plant called Natia in Biate. So then when my friends read out the story, and they started, okay, what is he wearing? Who is this guy? Where are they? What does this forest look like? So they have to imagine. So probably for the first time in their life, they have to draw something based on their imagination, based on their knowledge of how things are from their living, their life. Nobody told them the plant must look like this. Nobody gave them a picture of Natia plant, but they have to think, what is a Natia plant? What does it look like? How does the forest look in our land? So I really enjoyed looking at how they visualize their imaginative, environment.
I mean, that's a very, very detailed description of how it happened, because I think for many of the people who would like to do something similar like yours, hearing about how you went about it is very important, because then they can also replicate it. But also maybe you can also tell us something about the challenges, because I do know that the light went off, there was no current for so many days, and you had to wait. Some children went back. So I think these struggles are very important to show that it's not all very glamorous. It's not all very easy. It's difficult work. It's a difficult task to do all this.
Absolutely difficult. Every step of the journey was difficult. Not like for the drawing part. I mean, I was not even sure how many people would turn out to begin with. I can't force school children to come and then do this for me. It has to come with their own desire and willingness. And then the school, first of all, it was in January when the school was on a holiday. So it has to start from cleaning. The schoolroom, the classroom was, dirty and messy. We had to clean, and then I can't do anything alone. So then neighbor kids has helped me set up the venue. And then, of course, carrying this material, the paints and papers, and I don't even know how many people will participate, and I have to go back to Shillong, purchase everything, and bring back to Saipung. Then, of course, 20 plus kids of all ages came. So not only teenagers, but also toddlers. And they just turned up. So obviously, me being there is not enough. It's very difficult. And some started to fight, some started to throw paints at each other, and they start playing. They get bored, they want to play more. They want to paint whatever they want. They don't want to paint the story. That's also fine. But then somehow I realized that all of a sudden, without me telling, the neighbors came with the babies at the back, just to be there, just to kind of take the role of supervision, just to help me out. And then in and out, different people came at different times, and then I just really appreciated it. I was exhausted, of course.
I mean, that's really, really sweet. The neighbors coming in and helping on their own. I mean, that shows how strong the bond is there in the community. And I think that because you also being in the house of someone, staying there, and then you having the experience where such a difficult task, you are coming to a place, you have become familiar, but still it's an unknown place. And then people are coming and helping you. That must have been a big relief for you.
More than a relief, it was a reassurance that whatever I was doing, like the message I wanted to deliver has been delivered. I didn't ask them to come help me, but they did so out of what, maybe curiosity, out of pity, I don't know. But I really appreciated, and it wasn't possible without their help. And then, of course, wintertime, there's the water scarcity, then electricity, the blackouts happened quite frequently. Sometimes it lasts for 2 weeks, sometimes for a month. And so we had to live with this kind of reality of, inconvenience, I'd say. That it's not their fault, of course, but they had to live with it. And then organizing something like this had to go with that kind of reality. So that was really challenging.
Yeah, and I mean, and you did it. You did it. I can
Somehow.
Somehow, and I think so. From the book itself, because we'll also talk about the way how the book has been made, because I really loved it. In the sense, tell me something, a story. Let's say a story from here that you really enjoyed, and what did you learn from that story? Because as an anthropologist, you have been trained in a certain way, certain methodology, certain techniques, certain concepts. So that story that you have loved, how did it, let's say, help you understand the community more?
The original story.
Any story that you love and say, oh, this is a story I really love, and maybe it helped me understand Biate community very well. I mean, I have an idea now into their life world or something like that.
I think the reason why I particularly like this story, the original story about Natyal, is that, first of all, the character is not a human. It's a plant that talks. So that really shocked me. Then the plant refused to be plucked. So that's a simple tale, but somehow it remains in my mind. And then again, story isn't just about the plant. But it's also about the man who tried to pluck the leaf because he was tasked by his wife. And his wife asked him, can you get some Natyal leaves? And then later I discovered, what is this Natyal leaf? At that time, when I was in Saipung, I didn't even know what Natyal leaf looked like. I thought it was banana leaf. It's quite similar looking. But this Natyal plant is very important for the Biate community, because I asked them, so what's the significance of this plant? Like, why is it in this folktale? And they said, when we pack lunch or we pack snacks, rice-based snacks, it has to be Natyal. Okay. So there's already a story behind it. And then, so when do you pack these, this lunch and snacks? And then they said, well, we take them to gym fields. So then again leads to another story that tells something about the Biate community. So in that side, they have the long-lasting tradition of jum farming. And then that's really part of their everyday life. And then jum farming is also where women work. Yeah. Not everybody knows, and then not everybody agrees with the current practice of jum farming. So there's so many voices that go against jum farming, but it is very much part of their Biateness, so to speak. So I picked this story because it tells so many aspects of their everyday life without putting that into words. There's so many elements already there in that story. So that's why it kind of remains in my mind.
Yeah, we said the plant can talk, because when the Khasis also, you have animals can talk, trees can talk, all kinds of manner creatures can talk. So it tells you a lot about how the Khasis, the Biate, they look at nature, not as something, let's say, not alive, not dead, but something which is alive, which is like communicating back to you, So that tells you a lot about the, let's say, the indigenous people's cosmology, the tribal cosmology, whatever you want to call it. And that is something maybe in your Nyamtre that you are going to work on. I mean, you are already work on. Maybe that will also help you a little bit, maybe get an idea of how people think in terms of their spirituality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that comment, because I think more than anything, the reason why I like this story is because this non-human elements, more than human elements, have this agency. So it already refuses to put humans at the center of the world.
Yeah.
And that already allows us to think of the environment differently, to think of our engagement with the environment. And I think that's very much strongly rooted in Meghalaya in general. And then for the Biate, I think talking plants, placing the talking plants in the center of the story, tells many ways of how they deal with environment, they deal with what they think of nature and what is nature to begin with. It's not something so detached, it's not wilderness, it's not just the mountains, but it's how humans engage with it. And then that engagement is not about how humans, pluck plants or cut trees or extract some resources, but more of a conversation or interaction between the humans and more than human beings is really what this story tells us about.
I think the Native American also, I remember the one in the plains, when they hunt a bison, then when they have killed a bison, they'll go and talk to the bison, brother, thank you so much for feeding our family, feeding me. So you know what, they have life and I'm taking your life, but also at the same time I appreciate it and I give you thanks for that. That idea, that way of thinking is much better than having an industrial slaughterhouse where you bring an animal, slaughter it, it goes, another animal, slaughter it, goes. So in a way, I think this story, what you told me, gives an insight to such a large, very, very deep spiritual world. Don't you think so?
Well, I don't know if it is a spiritual or cultural or whatever they take it. I just wanted to show the raw essence of how they engage with the environment, and then I think it's actually up to them to decide whether that's religious or spiritual or else otherwise. Yeah.
And I think that's very important because then comes the agency, right? It's their agency, it's their decision. Like we from outside, I mean, I can have an opinion about it, but it is their opinion that should matter. And I think that is what the agency you've talked about a lot, right? Their help, their stories, their drawings, which is there in this book. And also like they made you think, okay, you know what, it doesn't sound Biate. So you have taken care to make sure that it's their voice which is speaking, not outsider's voice.
Yeah, I think that was the most important part. And I think that's what I also wanted to show in the latest article that I wrote, that this is a Biate story. And of course, for me, someone who's outside the community, Biate is not my first language. I'm not Biate. So when I make a book about the Biate, it has to come from an English story. But even then, when we translate that English text back into Biate to make a bilingual book, that Biate text must make sense on its own without the English text. So that was the crucial part of it. And then that makes this book a Biate book. And then that's really important.
And I think let's talk about now to the publisher, Sauramandala, right? So you worked with them, and then so in a way you were the creative director, let's say. You're the author, you had the illustrator, you had the editor, but you had a lot of input out there. Can you tell us something about the process of how that came about and what was the experience of working with Sauramandala?
Absolutely great. I'm so happy that I worked with them. So I worked with the TFFP, the Forgotten Folklore Project. It's a project by Sauramandala Foundation. And the way I found them was very funny, actually. There is a story. It was when one day I was in Saipung and in my Biate family's house, I just picked one of the books published through TFFP, and which was edited by Monica Thomas, which is my editor now. And I was fascinated. Oh, some organization out here locally makes a book in their own language about them and tells something about it visually and also for kids, for children. So I was like, this is something I wanted to do. So why don't I contact? And so that was the start of my relationship with them. And I'm really by chance, I don't know what sent that book to that house. Nobody knows. But yeah, it was by chance that I found the book and then I contacted them and then they really liked the idea. Plus they've been producing books, not only in Meghalaya, but mainly in Meghalaya, but nowadays across northeast India. But they didn't have a book in Biate. So it was a great collaboration to add Biate collection of books. Then I started to pitch the idea of what I wanted to do, which was, now that I think back, it was so unrealistic, but we had a great team, illustrator Cassie Gladinian, who understood what I wanted to portray. I wanted that visual story to be there. I didn't want the drawings to be the background story. I wanted to be equally important in the book. So the visual elements already have a story. They tell the story. Then the Monica, who is my editor, who understood the process, not only understood, but also wanted to craft the message in a way that helps the visual element. So it has to have both visual and the literary element. So it has to have both sides. If you just read the text, it doesn't really make sense. If you look at the illustration itself, it doesn't quite tell you the story. It has to have both elements. And then, so my team really helped with me to craft that, to actually exhibit these parts. Then they also had later on the communication team. They were fascinated by the idea and how the book was coming together. And then they had an idea of why don't we go to Saipung? And I think it was a great idea because the editor, who's based in Bangalore, illustrator who'd never been to Saipung, needed to see how people actually live there. They've been, drawing and crafting the text based on my stories, my observations, and the photographs and videos that I took from Saipung. So I was really happy when this idea came about. So the team grew also, and so with the team lead Sam, and then, Iba, and everybody, Priyanka also, and then so all of us went to Saipung, and it was really nice experience because then they get to see what I was talking about, why the book was so important. And then I wanted them to see how I interact with the Biate community in Saipung. I wanted to see how my relationship is and why this book is so important, why it's so important for me to bring this book back to the community. So I was really happy working with them.
And you came back from Holland just for this book, right?
Yes.
I mean, because you were there talking to them through online, but you had to come here to make sure it gets complete, right?
Yes, I think it's so important. And I think I'm a firm believer of human-to-human interaction. And of course, we worked closely since, I think, about early June. Well, first time I met them it must be in March or April. And then I returned to the Netherlands. And then I started the book project started, I think, in June. So we had so many online meetings. So, of course, they knew me and I knew them, but only through this screen. But it's so different when I come here and then, the Sam drove us all the way from Shillong to Saipung and all this journey. And going through the journey together, having a chit-chat, going through this experience together was really important part of this book project. So I think now that I look back, I'm so glad that I'm here, and I'm so glad that they gave me this opportunity to go every step of the process, and so many people get involved, and yeah, so I'm really happy.
Because I would like to talk about the book in terms of the color choice, the watercolor, which you said it was your choice to have watercolor, the way how the texts are being aligned and arranged, So maybe can you tell us something about, let's say, even illustration itself? What was your input? Is it about the character design you had an input, the color scheme, or maybe the text, the font size, or where they should be aligned? It's something more about that?
Yeah, thank you. So I had an idea about this illustration also. So the visual storytelling was already quite important to me. And then I wanted that visual part to be based on the drawings the kids made. So my only requirement for illustrator Gladdy was to make it as imaginative as possible, as childlike as possible, as close to the drawings as possible. And I wanted that drawing, the illustration, to be based completely on the drawings the children's made, because I wanted their perspective to come through her illustration. So she took the initiative, and I really appreciate her initiative. So she wasn't someone just understood my vision, how I envisaged the book, but I also took the initiatives to kind of visually thinking about how to place this and how to use, brushes. And then she made first, I think, digital drawings, and then And then we decided, no, actually, watercolor is better. It has this warmness of the Biate community. It has this imaginative elements that those Biate children drew. So we really liked it. And then the rest is history. She really, explored so many aspects without me telling. And it was only based on the observations, my stories, and also my photos. So she had never been to Saipung. But she somehow got the essence of what I wanted to do. So I was really happy.
And I think we are almost done with the program, but maybe a few more questions are there. So maybe the question that I like to ask, because I think the book has to be read. I can talk about it, I can try and show a little bit, but actually people have to go and read the book because it's beautiful. I mean, I very highly recommend this book. You should go and read it. Maybe also because you learn about the community in Meghalaya, which is not very well known. But also the story is beautiful. The drawings are beautiful.
Thank you.
The text is beautiful. No? So now from this book, right? And now you have doing a PhD as well. So we talked about a little bit. I think you also touch on how this is going to help your PhD a little bit, right? But maybe you can talk a little more about that, like how this kind of project enriches your PhD work when you are doing in Shangpung on Nyamtre. How does it support that as well?
I think this is a beginning of my, experimental methodology. I wanted my research methodologies to be multimodal, so not based on just me interviewing people and I get everything, or read books and then that's it. I wanted to explore how they see the world in a way that is not limited to academic writing, because I want them to read what I write. I want them to see what I wanted to portray. This is all collaboration. My research cannot be done without their help, without their perspective. So I'm now exploring different mediums of showing their perspectives and views and opinions, so that it doesn't have to be academic writing, it doesn't have to be writing, it doesn't have to be just text, it could be just audio-visual, it could be sound-based. So this is just the beginning of my methodological exploration, so to speak.
Which means that, let's say, even from the Shangpung, even from, let's say, Nyamtre, when you have worked with them, there will be something coming out. Let's say a book, let's say an audio, or maybe a video, some kind of small documentary. Maybe there's something in your mind going on about that.
Perhaps, yeah. In my mind, so many things are going on, and then one of which is to explore these different kinds of mediums. It would be great if I could use drawing as part of my method. Perhaps I'll be the one who draws, not just letting them draw. But maybe I would just explore as I spend more time with them.
Because in terms of your writing, right, you've written quite a few articles now for Shillong Times.
Thank you.
And I see your writing, it's like you have trained as an academician, but your writing also is very accessible. A lot of, like today's writing also was, a lot of imagery was there. I mean, how you talk about the kitchen, how you talk about what there in the kitchen, it made me feel like I'm there. So
that's great. That's the best compliment I've ever received.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, like, is that part of your training process as an academician, or something that you have worked on your own? Maybe you have joined a course, something, maybe you have been thinking about this for a long time?
I think that ethnographic vignette is, part and parcel of anthropology. We have to show what is it like to be in that place, because after the research, we have to tell the stories about the people we collaborate with for our research, and it has to deliver the message to the people who never heard of Saipung, or Pinal people, or Khasi, Jaintia, Hills, never heard of Meghalaya, never been here. So how can I describe this place in a way that they feel like they've been here, they've gone through the experience that I've gone through, the things that I've heard, things that I've observed. So it is a part of the anthropological training, but at the same time, I don't want that to be always academic. I want people who took part in my research to be reading what I write, because it's about them, and then they helped me. So I want my writing to be as accessible as possible and as imaginative as possible, that people can resonate with what I want to try, to portray.
So basically, you have to suppress your academic side a little bit sometimes, maybe like not to be so critical, just to, let's say, paint a story, paint a picture, right, and then describe it. So maybe that is something I think is also like, so you have to balance it out. No, you have to know
Yeah, absolutely.
who's the audience.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, is a very important, I think, descriptor of a writer. No, you know the audience and you write based on what the audience may like, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I think it requires me to do a lot of unlearning, and not to write academically, full of jargon and descriptive. I want it to be ethnographic. I want it to be imaginative. I want the readers to feel how I felt, and I want the readers to go through the experience of it. And those readers include the people who I talk about. I want them to be the audience, and then that's the most important part for me.
I think maybe we'll come now to the last part of the interview. What are your future plans for the book? And are there any more books coming out?
Well, I don't know. Well, see, my most important mission is to publish this book, and I think it will be published officially in December. Why? It's because the Biate community would have their annual festival, Nurinkut, in mid-January, January 11th. So I wanted to bring these books back to Saipung to deliver. So that's my main goal. The rest, I think, what I could do is not the publication is not the end of this journey. I feel this is just the start of everything. I want the Biate community to then feel like they can publish something. They can write about them, about their life, their cultural practices in their own language. So I hope more books would come out. Not necessarily authored by me, but authored by the Biate community, perhaps. So I hope that will be the future for them. In terms of my own future, well, the possibilities are limitless. I would like to take this book to anywhere I go, not just Meghalaya, but perhaps beyond India, beyond Netherlands, maybe to Japan also. So, anywhere in the world, I want more people to get to know about Meghalaya, also the Biate community, how they live their life. Yeah, so that's my goal.
I mean, and after the program, let's say on January, it'll be very nice to come back to you again and ask you how has been the program, what was the experience, what was the feedback that you got from the community, because I think that is going to be very, very important. And hopefully come up with a new book as well, because this book is beautiful, but I think you may have some other plans as well, some more books. So when those come, please do come to our program. We'll love to have you here. So audience, thank you so much to be with us here, and thank you, Anna, for being here with us. And I hope you enjoy this program, and we'll have the episode very soon, and we'll have all the description about Anna, bio, and also the different links, because this is not the only article she wrote today about the Biate. There are also a couple more. We'll also put those links in the bio itself, and I hope you'll enjoy this. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much.